thank you, our President, for coming. Your Excellency, you came in Hilo, you honored us, you came in Labor Day, you gave us that privilege. We must thank you more sincerely. At the same time, I wish to extend a warm welcome to the Director General of International Labour Organization, ILO, and other distinguished dignitaries who have come today. I wish to express our profound gratitude to the Ituc Africa for choosing Kenya as the venue for this Congress. Karibuni, Kenya, and welcome to Kenya. May God bless you, all of you.
Monsieur Gilbert Ongo, directeur général du BIT, camarade Luc Triang, secrétaire général de la CIC, camarade Kwasi Amankwa, secrétaire général de la CIC, Afrique, brother Francis Atoli, secrétaire général de la Côte, et tant d'autres. Mais on peut aussi citer notre ami frère Francis Atoli, et tant d'autres qui ont fait la fierté du continent africain. Je voudrais rendre grâce à Dieu, le Tout-Puissant, pour nous avoir donné la force et la santé d'être là pour participer à cette grande rencontre des travailleurs et des travailleuses africains. Féliciter aussi l'organisation Haute la Cotou et son secrétaire général, le camarade Francis Atoli, pour la parfaite organisation, l'accueil chaleureux et le traitement dont nous avons été l'objet depuis notre arrivée en terre kenyane. À mes camarades secrétaires généraux des organisations syndicales membres de la CIC Afrique, je ne trouve pas les mots pour vous remercier et vous exprimer ma profonde gratitude pour la confiance que vous m'avez maintes fois renouvelée comme président de notre organisation africaine. J'associe à ces remerciements mon camarade et frère, Kwasi Amankwa, secrétaire général de la CIC Afrique, pour tout le travail qu'il a abattu et les énormes sacrifices qu'il a consentis pour porter la voix des travailleurs et des travailleurs africains partout dans le monde. Permettez-moi aussi de remercier tous nos partenaires ici présents et nos amis syndicalistes venus d'ailleurs et nos amis qui ont fait le déplacement à Nairobi. Une mention spéciale au directeur général du BIT, M. Gilbert Ongo, et l'ensemble de son staff, ainsi qu'à Luc Triang, secrétaire général de la CIC. Excellences, Monsieur le Président de la République, chers camarades, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers délégués, de 2006 à 2023, voilà 17 ans que notre organisation régionale, la CIC Afrique, gouvernement des travailleuses et des travailleurs africains, s'emploie à rendre les conditions de vie et de travail meilleures dans notre continent. Elle s'est activée à faire respecter les droits humains, à étendre l'éducation pour tous, la protection aux couches vulnérables, particulièrement aux travailleuses et travailleurs de l'économie informelle, à contribuer au développement socio-économique du continent par des propositions, par une participation à toutes les actions menées pour le bien-être et le mieux-être des populations. Elle a joué également son rôle dans les politiques d'intégration, de changement climatique, de bonne gouvernance, de mise en place de services sociaux de base, performants et accessibles à toutes les couches sociales. Sur un autre registre, la CIC Afrique, soucieuse de la sauvegarde des ressources naturelles de notre continent, a toujours attiré l'attention des gouvernements africains sur la nécessité de mettre fin aux effets néfastes des politiques néolibérales sur la vie des populations et d'imposer une législation progressiste aux entreprises multinationales pour assurer la promotion et l'emploi décent et le développement durable. Il est plus qu'urgent que les gouvernements africains prennent des mesures qui tiennent compte de l'avenir des jeunes Africains qui, dans le désespoir, sont souvent obligés de braver les océans et le désert pour une vie meilleure, laissant derrière eux un continent immensément riche qui ne demande qu'un sursaut de sa population, qui doit prendre conscience que le présent peut changer et que l'avenir peut être plein d'espoir. Nous avons une forte conviction que la transformation structurelle de l'Afrique ne peut se faire qu'avec les Africains. Gouvernée par les Africains et par les Africains. Sous ce rapport, il est nécessaire de faire davantage et mieux dans la bonne gouvernance, la lutte contre la corruption, la promotion de la démocratie, le respect des droits individuels et collectifs. Nous avons foi en la qualité des Africains à affronter les obstacles et relever les défis, comme nous l'avons fait du reste, face à la colonisation, face aux politiques d'ajustement structurel, les différentes crises alimentaires, financières, économiques et celles récentes de la pandémie du Covid-19. À chaque fois que l'Afrique, grâce au courage et à l'ingéniosité de ses fils et de ses filles, a su trouver les moyens, les mécanismes pour amortir les effets et de ces chocs sur les populations. Par exemple, alors que le monde prédisait des millions de morts en Afrique pendant la pandémie, notre continent a été le plus résilient et a réalisé les meilleurs chiffres de croissance. Monsieur le Président de la République, honorables individus, Mesdames, Messieurs, chers délégués, malgré tout le travail abattu et la bonne volonté des syndicats africains, nous faisons encore face à des reculs démocratiques qui font naître dans certaines régions de notre continent des foyers de tension, aggravés par l'installation de groupes djihadistes et de rebelles. Nous ne trouvons toujours pas les solutions à l'emploi des jeunes africains parce que l'Afrique est mal industrialisée. Nous ne trouvons pas toujours des solutions à la gestion patriotique de nos ressources naturelles. Autant que faire se peut, nous avons été au premier rang dans les batailles pour la consolidation de la démocratie et de la justice sociale. C'est dans ce cadre qu'il faut comprendre les différents thèmes retenus pour notre congrès, à l'occasion de ce congrès, à savoir, au cours de nos différents congrès, à savoir renouveler le mouvement syndical africain pour l'émancipation africaine, des syndicats forts pour une Afrique meilleure, s'unir pour bâtir une meilleure Afrique, et aujourd'hui sous le thème Amuka Africa, ou Réveillez-vous Afrique. Vous remarquerez la constance de notre organisation dans ses choix pour le développement du continent, pour que l'Afrique ne soit plus vue comme le continent de la misère, de la pauvreté, du sous-emploi, du sous-développement et des dictatures. Nous voulons que l'Afrique soit, comme le disait l'écrivain Birago Diop, je le cite, cet arbre robuste et jeune, splendide, seul au milieu des fleurs blanches et fanées, qui repousse patiemment, obstinément, et dont les fruits ont peu à peu l'amère saveur de la liberté. Fin de citation. Monsieur le Président de la République, honorables distingués invités, camarades, chers délégués, ce 5e congrès placé sous le thème « Réveillez-vous Afrique » ou « Levez-vous Afrique » est une étape importante dans la vie de notre organisation. En ce sens qu'elle a atteint une telle maturité que le moment est venu de répondre efficacement à l'attente des travailleurs et des travailleuses africains. Dans ce cadre, nous devons faire en sorte que les travailleurs et les travailleuses africains parlent d'une seule voix. Parlent d'une seule voix par la fusion de 2 organisations sous-régionales, à savoir l'Organisation de l'unité syndicale africaine, sous le contrôle de notre camarade Areski, et la Confédération syndicale internationale Région Afrique, la CIC Afrique. Nous devons rapidement poursuivre les discussions pour réaliser ce vœu cher aux travailleurs et aux travailleuses, mais aussi aux peuples africains. Le monde est en train de s'organiser. De grands ensembles économiques, politiques, géostratégiques, et notre responsabilité en tant qu'organisation de travailleurs et de travailleuses nous oblige à trouver les voies et moyens de nous adapter à ce nouvel environnement. Plus de poids, de représentativité et de respect au sein de l'Union africaine et de l'organisation internationale. Nous devons également accompagner la mise en œuvre de la zone de libre-échange économique continentale, la ZLECAf, considérée par les économistes comme la plus grande zone de libre-échange en termes de pays et de consommation. C'est une opportunité pour les économies et les populations africaines en termes de stimulation et de croissance économique, mais également par la création d'emplois. Elle est aussi très bénéfique pour les populations et les économies africaines grâce au commerce intra-régional. Notre 5e congrès sera également, chers camarades, l'occasion de réfléchir sur des thèmes essentiels qui font l'objet de résolutions et de pistes de solutions pour le meilleur devenir de l'Afrique et du monde. Permettez-moi, pour conclure encore une fois, de remercier M. le Président de la République, son gouvernement et le peuple kenyan, et notre frère Francis Atoli pour toutes les dispositions prises pour la réussite de notre grande rencontre. Amuka Africa! Amuka Africa! Amuka Africa! Vive la CIC Afrique, vive la CIC. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
On behalf of all the foreign delegates that are here, and which are also very pleased to be here, we also thank you for the organization of this important conference. Bringing all African trade unionists together is an important event for this continent. And let me start by presenting to all the trade unionists in this room, and we are all trade unionists, to present you a win. The right to strike, which has been blocked for more than 10 years, delayed, where there was a refusal to dialogue with us as workers, the ILO governing body earlier this month has decided to refer this case, as we asked as workers, to the International Court of Justice. This is a win, because it is fundamental that the right to strike is seen as an integral part of the ILO Convention 87 on the freedom of association. There is no freedom of association without the right to strike. The right to strike is fundamental, and it has brought us where we are today. Nothing has been decided yet on this, because it's in the hands of the International Court of Justice. But let's cross our fingers that the International Court will confirm our view. And I want to raise a second point, which is of great concern to all of us. The basis for a fair and equal society is under threat. And that basis is called democracy. Recent reports confirm that democracy is on decline. We see everywhere in the world, also on this continent, a rise of extremism and some politicians that want to divide societies by putting people up against each other. Democracy is where we as trade unions stand for. Respect for human rights, equality, freedom of real free elections, right for minorities, and much more. All core values for us. Today, these values are under attack. We see a rise of autocracies, and in several countries, no real free elections anymore, no respect for the voice of people. Unfortunately, this decline in democracy goes hand in hand with the decline of workers' rights and trade union rights. We are the largest social movement in the world. We are also the largest defenders of democracy. Being the largest movement defending democracy, we are unfortunately also the first targets of those that want to destroy democracy. We are their biggest opponents. They target us and workers first. And we must fight for democracy, because fighting for democracy is fighting for workers' rights and trade union rights. That's also why we as ITUC will launch a campaign for democracy. And our General Council that will meet in December, we will propose to decide on that there. And now I will continue a little bit in French. Troisième, Amuka Africa. 2 mots qui en disent long sur le travail qui attend le CSI Afrique et le mouvement syndical africain, afin de faire face aux nombreux défis auxquels l'Afrique est confrontée dans cette période difficile où le monde entier connaît également des difficultés. Vous ne ferez pas ce travail seul, vous bénéficieriez du soutien de l'ensemble du mouvement syndical mondial. Oui, vous, organisations syndicales, avez le devoir d'agir pour redonner au continent sa place sur la scène mondiale. Nous savons tous que le continent regorge de ressources naturelles précieuses et d'une population jeune de plus en plus éduquée et avec beaucoup de potentiel. Il n'est donc pas acceptable de voir que plus de la moitié de la population reste pauvre et qu'une bonne partie des pays sont classés comme à faible revenu. Amuka Africa. Oui, il est grand temps que le syndicat relève les défis de l'Afrique et contribue à sa renaissance, comme le dit si bien le projet de déclaration de ce congrès. Dans cette lutte, le partenariat pour le développement est plus que nécessaire, mais doit être mené sur une base égale, sur un pied d'égalité, car il n'y aura jamais de justice sociale tant que ce continent ne recevra pas le juste dividende de sa contribution à la richesse mondiale. Plus concrètement, en tant qu'organisation syndicale, nous devons nous lancer dans une croisade contre les inégalités. Avec les outils dont nous disposons, nous devons lutter pour la création d'emplois décents, contre le manque de protection sociale adéquate, pour le respect des droits de l'homme et des syndicats, pour l'amélioration des conditions de travail, et nous devons lutter contre l'informalité afin que cette informalité ne devienne pas, sous prétexte de non-réglementation, une raison pour mettre de côté les droits les plus fondamentaux au travail. Pour pouvoir réussir, il faut aussi agir sur d'autres leviers qui ont un impact négatif ou constituent des obstacles à la redistribution des richesses. La croissance économique globale du continent et au niveau national devrait profiter aux travailleurs et à leurs familles en tant qu'acteurs et contributeurs principaux au produit national brut. Cela devrait impliquer des politiques économiques et sociales appropriées dont nous devons influencer le développement et le suivi par nous-mêmes pour garantir que les dividendes ne continuent pas à aller dans les poches des riches au lieu de contribuer au bien-être des populations. Ces politiques devraient, entre autres, créer des emplois plus décents et des revenus plus élevés et cibler les couches les plus vulnérables de la population. Combattez la flexibilisation du travail et la fiscalité complaisante sous prétexte d'attirer davantage d'investissements. What we need are more investment in promising sectors that create green jobs, more justice in the energy transition, and we need the jobs created in Africa. Picking in resources and creating jobs elsewhere is a reality that can and should not return on this continent. On the eve of COP28 in Dubai, the greening of jobs and economy is more than sensitive in the context of the continent's commitment to its intensive industrialization and the modernization of the agricultural sector. Recurring questions are also African sovereign debt, untransparent financial flows on this continent and elsewhere in the world, and others that create asymmetries in economic structures. They also should be addressed. And to have success, dear comrades and dear delegates, we will need increasingly strong representative unions capable of to commit to collective bargaining and playing their role in social dialogue. We are also part of the Ituc's Africa's commitment to continue this work, to fight against the proliferation of unions on this continent while respecting the right of workers to affiliate with the organization of their choice without any interference. We must strengthen our representativeness. We must strengthen our financial viability. We must organize every worker, also young people, also people that have no job, women, disabled people, migrants without any distinction of race, ethnicity, religious and ideological beliefs, sexual orientations and others. If we do that, we will be stronger. Any approach to create trade union unity on the continent will always be supported because it will allow all unions and all workers to be more effective, to have more influence in our relations to the African Union, the African Development Bank and other multinational institutions. It will make us stronger to the UN 2030 agenda and its SDGs. It will make us stronger in our work in the ILO, the organization that has a very important place in our work and in our hearts. Gilbert, you have the support of all of us in your daily work. Congress members and distinguished guests, thank you for the invitation, the good organization, and the excellent quality of the welcome from the host country, Kenya. All that remains for me to do is to wish you and us together a good, peaceful Congress and fruitful debates. I have your continent in my heart. Let's work together for a strong ITUC Africa and a strong ITUC worldwide. Africa, asante sana. Thank you.
I would like to specifically thank President Ruto for the special attention attached to the social agenda, to the industrial relation, as witnessed by his presence not only with us today, but also with us in June during the International Labour Conference. Dear delegates, since this is the first time that I have the opportunity as Director General of being with all of you from the continent, let me thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart for the decisive role that the African Trade Union Movement has played in my election as Director General of the ILO. I would also like to express my personal appreciation to Kwesi, my brother, for your determination, for the job that you have carried out to advance the workers' rights and the interests all over the continent. As a trade union leader, first in the Ghana Trade Union Confederation, and then as General Secretary of ITUC Africa. This is really exemplary for us. Dear colleagues, the theme of your Congress, AMCA Africa, Wake Up Africa, echoes the common desire of organized labor and the ILO to address the many contemporary challenges facing African labor market. And these include climate change, these include globalization, these include technological development, demographic shift, and also geopolitical tensions fueled by conflict and unfortunately by wars. Our common mandate to ensure lasting peace and decent work for all has never been more relevant than today in the face of chronic manifestation of unemployment and development which weigh disproportionately on African youth and African women in particular. Combating poor working conditions, combating poverty, combating inequality and increasing informalization remain key priorities. We also need to eradicate the scourge of child labor from the continent. Right now, 41% of children in Africa between the age of 5 and 14 are involved in economic activities. And this got to stop. we owe our children a better future. Addressing these difficult challenges requires new perspective and a renewed commitment from African government to engage in social dialogue with our social partners. And talking about our social partners, I would like to recognize Jackie Mungo. I didn't see you, so I didn't recognize you at the beginning. Thank you for being with us. It also calls for increased integration of economies. The ILO therefore commits to ensuring that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement becomes the driving force for socio-economic transformation and increased opportunity for decent work. Looking at your Congress draft resolutions, I am encouraged to see several points of convergence with ILO priorities. First, the need to address the plight of African migrant women and men. Too often, they fall victim to human trafficking or die in their quest for better working and living conditions. The ILO supports your call to promote voluntary and right-based governance of migration alongside campaign to end discrimination, racism, and xenophobia. We will thus be stepping up our work to promote fair labor migration that benefits migrant workers as well as countries of origin as well as countries of destination. Dear colleagues, the achievement of social justice calls for the urgent realization of freedom of association and collective bargaining. The recently held ILO governing body approved a strategy for the promotion and implementation of the right to collective bargaining. And this, together with a greater focus on freedom of association, will allow the ILO to step up its effort for the effective realization of these two enabling rights. At a time when so many workers are grappling with rising cost of living and declining purchasing power, the tripartite meeting on living wages to be held in 2024 should be instrumental in shaping consensus and enhancing ILO leadership, advocacy, and support to constituents in this critical area. The extension of social protection is another common priority in the fight against poverty and the fight against inequalities. The ILO will therefore leverage the momentum created by the Global Accelerator on Jobs and Social Protection for Just Transitions to build and finance social protection systems. Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome the importance you attach to the promotion of a safe and healthy working environment as a new fundamental right. The governing body adopted a global strategy to promote the ratification and the implementation of the two new core conventions. In our continent, 22 countries have ratified Convention 155 and 16 have ratified Convention 187. I really count on your support to help us increase the ratification and implementation rates of these instruments. The urgency of promoting gender equality and addressing violence and harassment in the world of work is another priority that I share. To date, we have reached 36 ratification of Convention 190, including 25% from African countries. These efforts, I trust, will continue. Last but not least, you call for improving the regulation of digitalization, and that call is timely. The ILO has placed for the 2025 conference agenda a standard-setting double discussion on decent work in the platform economy. This aims to develop a legal framework for a just digital transition with decent work at its core. Dear colleagues, the governing body recently endorsed the establishment of a global coalition for social justice. The coalition will increase multilateral cooperation, partnership, and actions on the ground in order to advance the social justice and decent work for all, the fighting against inequalities, the fighting for equal access to opportunities, the fight against exclusion has to be at the core of our daily work. The coalition's work is also a contribution for the UN Social Summit in 2025 and the post-2030 Global Development Framework, the social summit that we all hope will be endorsed or decided by the resolution of the UN General Assembly by the end of the year or so. And the role of unions in shaping the global coalition is essential. So I really look forward in working closely with you all so to accelerate progress towards social justice and together shape a new social contract. Indeed, we need a new social contract in this world. In closing, let me commend again the President of Ituc Africa, Modi Giro, and his General Secretary, Kwesi, alongside the team for a sterling contribution to the union movement. To the new leaders who will be elected, let me assure you of my commitment to work with you in our common struggle for a better world, in our common struggle for social justice. I thank you.
President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces in our country. Our Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection, Sister Florence Bore, the International Labour Organization, Director General, Brother Gilbert Hogbo, the Director of the International Labour Organization, ACTRAF, Sister Maria Elena, Sister Jacqueline Mugo, who is with us here. First and foremost, let me thank you, Your Excellency the President, for our Republic, for finding time out of your busy schedule to be with us this afternoon, and particularly for always creating time for the working people of our country whenever we call upon you. I remember vividly, Mr. President, that on the 14th February this year, when our organizations, that is the Central Organization of Trade Unions Executive Board, and affiliate general secretaries called on you at State House in Nairobi, you made 4 promises, but I will mention only 3 because the 4th one we are still negotiating. That you committed to fulfill. First, when we invited you to join us during the 1st May International Labor Day celebrations as our worker number 1 to Uhuru Gardens, to attend and preside over the celebrations during that wonderful day of our year calendar, we saw you in person. You left and you came back at our luncheon and more so to explain to workers how you want to put up houses for Kenyans. Secondly, we requested you kindly to allow us to ask the Director General of the International Labour Organization to invite you to attend the 111th International Labour Day Conference in Geneva. And on receiving the invitation, you responded positively and attended this important annual event of the International Labour Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. And this was a big honor, not only to Kenyan workers, but Africa, as well as making history to our country being the first president to attend the ILC. Thirdly, Mr. President, was our request for you to come and grace today's International Trade Union Confederation African Region 5th Congress. You also agreed and kept your word, and here you are, Your Excellency. What else do I say? We thank you for keeping your word, Your Excellency. We are aware we have been in public life, Your Excellency. Very few political leaders who are committed to the ideals of keeping up their words, and you are one of them who keep their, whatever you say, you make sure you are up to it. Let me also take this opportunity, Mr. President, on behalf of Kenyan Trade Union Movement, to humbly welcome all delegates and guests to this important 5th African ITUC Congress in our country, Kenya, and I hope and trust that you will feel, my brothers and sisters, you will all feel comfort while here in this capital of our country, Nairobi. At the same time, let me take this opportunity to thank the government of His Excellency, the President, William Samoei Ruto, whom we are with here, to have waived any payment on visas. All of you, none of you paid any penny on a visa. And if there is any, here he is, you will be refunded your money. And let me tell you, it is his policy, and he has preached it everywhere on the continent, wherever he goes, that he wants Africa of free visas, so that he can be able to promote free movement of persons on this continent, free trade amongst ourselves, to promote inter-trade and ease flow of communication on our continent. That is part of what he has been preaching. We thank you for these bold steps, Mr. President, and continue preaching this. For example, we in this African community, we don't require somebody visiting Uganda and he has a visa from Uganda or Tanzania or Rwanda or Burundi or Somalia now to come to Kenya and is being asked for another visa. In the same breath, Your Excellency, as a labor leaders, we can attest here today that you remain fearless leader who never shy away from receiving criticisms. Let me tell my colleagues to know that. Considering that I personally, as Francis Atwoli, Secretary General of KOTU, for so many years, I have been one of your great critics, who before your election, I criticized you on every proposal you made to the electorate. But as a true Democrat in our democratic society, after your election, you said, you guy, come around, let's sit down, and we agreed to work together and promote workers and Kenyans' interests at large. That is a true reflection of a true democratic leader. When my colleagues all over the world, they were worried that, oh, maybe this will have to be what happens maybe elsewhere, you changed the narrative, it became positive, and you moved closer to us more than any other organization. And we thank you for that. And I think that is a very good example for the young generation and those who aspire to be leaders for the purposes of creating a united nation, a nation that cares about other leaders and respects the views of them, of whatever type, from those who are opposed to them. You have also continued, not only that, you didn't stop there. You have also continued to engage workers always. You have given us audience to which we remain grateful as we equally continue championing for the aspirations of working men and women in our country. Most of people say, why is not court talking about the cost of living? Why court is not talking about issues related to taxation and so on? Why court is quiet when people are doing this? But I can assure you, and here the president is, I have time and again engaged the president. He has given us his side of his story, and we have given him our side of story. And we have given ourselves time bound that we expect things to change. I remember when I took over our organization, there were a lot of problems. That is the Central Organization of Trade Unions. It could not afford a ticket, even of one guest or a delegate or whatever. But I can assure you, President, that our organization is one of the powerful organizations on the continent of Africa. And as you see us here, for my brothers and my sisters, we have hosted them as Central Organization of Trade Unions. And this is it shows maturity and more committed leadership to an organization that is able to host brothers and sisters in magnitude numbers as those that you can witness here. This is what also some of our colleagues stand for, like Nigerian Labour Congress, Ghana TUC, and so many other trade unions on the continent do. It's not only KOTU, but we also emulate our brothers from elsewhere, including Senegal, where Brother Mudi Giro comes from. Your Excellency, you extended us this honor by appointing me recently as a member of the Health Insurance Authority to be part of the team that is spearheading social health reforms in our country. And your government is putting in place some mechanism to make sure that we have a working workers and Kenyans health insurance for all. Brothers and sisters, KOTU Kenya is honored to host the 5th Congress of the International Trade Union Confederation, Africa, under the theme, Amuka Africa. I want to thank ITC. Amuka Africa. Amuka Africa. To have translated that awake into our national official language of Kiswahili, that let Africa wake up. And that has been your policy, Mr. President. Wherever you have gone, you have highly talked about Amuka Africa, on global financing, on global unity, on global participation in international fora, and in everything that you thought Africa should take a center stage. You have always talked without fear of contradiction, and we support you for that. However, as I have always said, Africa is awake, and as workers, we must always unite, for we have nothing to lose but our chains. In the pursuit of a brighter future for our workers, we must acknowledge the pressing need to build skills across the African continent, because our workforce deserves the opportunity to thrive in an era of rapid change. You can do so if you are working closely with governments. I want to thank governments, not only our government here. When we were in our meeting in Geneva, that is the governing body where I represent workers in this region. Sorry, Sister Jacqueline, it's a little bit painful. But government supported us to make sure that we win a vote to refer the rights to strike to the International Court of Justice. Where there is an arbitration, where people are not understanding, let other people arbitrate us. And if you are not working with governments together, moving with governments together, they would have left us alone. And that is why there are things under social tripartism that both employers, workers, and governments must move towards one line. And the three are anchored at the International Labour Organization like this. That is why after our elections and our party lost to his party, to the party of the president, I told my colleagues, I go back to where I belong. Because where I belong is in social tripartism, social dialogue, and an area of collective bargaining. I want to thank our employers. They have talked a lot about cost of living. The employers have someone that they can pass to the expenses of doing businesses. This somebody is a consumer who is a worker. Workers, we have nobody that we can pass to. And that is why we need to come together with the employers as they talk about the cost of living at their own initiative. First of all, say, this is the percentage we are declaring to our suffering workers in this era of high cost of living. We will appreciate, we will thank them, and we will love them. Now, as the world is gearing up towards the COP28 that will be taking place in Dubai, I call upon all of us not to forget the clarion call for just transition that ensures that as we move towards a sustainable future, the rights and well-being of workers are safeguarded. But I have also told my colleagues that just transition does not only mean our areas of comfort being safeguarded by this clarion call. It also means that we are transiting from the current situation of agitation to next level. We cannot continue, remain in the agitation which has been our background for years. We must move to a next level from agitation to articulation so that we can attract both our employers and government to sit down and see what is good for workers and what do we need to have. Furthermore, we must remain true to our commitment of ending gender abuses in our workplaces through forced environments where all workers, regardless of gender, can contribute their talents without fear of discrimination or harassment. At this point, let me thank Mr. President for the further support you have extended to us by constituting a tripartite committee that is now working towards the process of ratifying various international labor conventions in the country, notably Convention number 190 and Convention number 189, to which you have made references to in various addresses that you have made, both locally and across the globe, we kindly ask your government to hasten this process and carry out this ratification as the world is watching us, Your Excellency. Brothers and sisters, it is about time that African continent adopts the high roadmap towards social protection. The well-being of our workers should not be compromised for short-term gains, because social protection measures are not only a mark of a civilized society, but also an investment in the stability and resilience of our workforce. And on this note, I want to thank Your Excellency for having said that let us, we in Kenya here, change our contribution to a little bit higher contribution, so that when one is retiring, he has something to carry with him at home. I thank you for that. We used not to see that. We used to take the government to court on the same, but I think if that care is taken, then that will be all right. Lastly, I want to appeal also to my colleagues who are here. What we need to do is like what others do. Let government have our money if there is money. But let us also carry out audit on that so that we can complain. Sometimes we make complaints and we don't audit. And when we don't audit, whom do you claim? Brothers and sisters, let me, as I wind up, remind us that in this age of rapid digitization, unions must evolve and fight to remain relevant by inventing new approaches towards membership drive that is so sophisticated and organized for our member sustainability. I want to declare to our brothers here in Kenya and those who are from elsewhere in Africa that I've had a short meeting with the Director General of the International Labour Organization. One of the flag I raised was towards this issue of digitization and digital economy and so on. We need, as leaders, to go to the drawing board and understand it well, and we require a lot of support from the International Labour Organization. I'm happy that the Director General has itemized it as an item of agenda to be seriously discussed at the International Labour Conference. Brothers and sisters, let me end by reminding us that our struggles and triumphs are interconnected across borders. As such, solidarity is our strength, and by uniting with workers worldwide, we amplify our collective voice for justice and fairness. This Congress, therefore, is a pivotal moment for us to reflect on our shared aspirations and renew our total commitment to the cause of workers. We have nothing to lose but freeing ourselves, and together we shall forge our path towards a more equitable and prosperous future of workers across our continent. Finally, Your Excellency, let me take this opportunity to humbly thank the team behind the success of this Congress. I want to thank you, and I want to thank you, President, once again for finding time to be with us. I know there are a lot of important factions that you skipped because of us. And may God bless you.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to this auspicious occasion of the 5th Congress of the International Trade Union Confederation Africa. I applaud the Central Organization of Trade Unions Kenya for their remarkable efforts in convening this Congress. We assure you of our support while championing for workers' rights and ensuring that workers enjoy decent employment free from discrimination, forced labor, child labor, and hazardous work. Trade unions must remain beacons of strength, hope, and support to not only workers, but also the countries of operation. Distinguished delegates, we appreciate ILO for coming up with such a valuable instrument for managing human relations, engaging in open and constructive discussion, sharing and exchanging of views, and building of consensus around issues is key for lasting solutions and peace. We hold true to our commitment to meet our obligations under the ILO Constitution and to engage the social partners in all matters pertaining employment and labor. Distinguished guests, trade unions must also adjust to the changes and put in place measures to ensure that they leave no workers behind, nor they are left behind. The recruitment strategies and organization of yesteryears may not be instrumental any longer. I urge all the trade unions and delegates here to devise innovative ways and support governments in making this call a reality. It is time to act decisively, and we must all stand up and advance the Director General's call for social justice for all, and which resonates with the ITUC call, Amka Africa. I wish you all robust and fruitful discussions during this 3-day Congress. It is now my singular honor and privilege to welcome His Excellency, the President, Dr. William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya and the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, to make his speech.
You're all welcome to Nairobi, and you're all welcome to Kenya. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Nairobi. Let me also confirm what Francis Atwoli has said, that we are a robust democratic country. We have our differences, but they are not personal. We have different viewpoints, but we are gentlemen enough and ladies enough to accept that a good idea must always give way to a better idea. We all believe that it is only fools who don't change their minds. And that is why I am delighted to join you at this 5th Congress of the International Trade Union Confederation in Africa, and deeply honored to have this opportunity to address this very auspicious gathering. Before I proceed, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to our country, Kenya, and to our capital city of Nairobi. We are very hospitable people who take our moral and cultural duty of welcoming our visitors very, very seriously. Besides, this country hosts archaeological sites that have been acclaimed globally as the cradle of humankind. So every visitor who comes to Kenya from everywhere, Europe, America, Asia, the rest of this continent, when they come to Kenya, they are coming home. So welcome home. And this is why we have been championing the elimination of national boundaries as barriers to integration and greater engagement between people, enterprises, and advocating for open skies throughout Africa, and implementing a visa-free policy to make our brothers and sisters throughout the world to feel at home here in Kenya. Additionally, Kenya is a delightful tourist attraction in every aspect. Even this city has its own share of magical experiences, including a very close canopy, you must have seen it, of forest right here in Nairobi, and a national wildlife park right here, making it a truly unique global destination. And I hope you will find time to enjoy magical Kenya in her full splendor. Karibuni sana, Kenya. Thank you very much, Brother Francis Atwoli, for your invitation and for your many kind words. It is indeed true that I have been available and ready to participate in matters pertaining to Kenyan workers, and I've honored your invitations to be with you at important events. But remember, Francis, you didn't say everything. Maybe I will add another two. You remember we had a conversation when I came and I explained, I took time to explain to you and the leadership of our Kenyan workers that you not only represent the people who are working, but you also represent the jobless. Otherwise, the people who don't have jobs will have nobody to represent them. And I explained to you that I am going to work on a program to have more people, to have jobs, so that you have a bigger number to represent. And I took a long time to explain what we are going to do to create job opportunities so that we can have more workers, more people earning a decent wage. And that is the reason why I told you there are three things that I am going to do in my tenure. That number one, we will have a robust housing program. Not because we are looking for houses necessarily, but because housing creates millions of jobs. And I want to report to you, Secretary General and the leadership of the labor movement here, that in the last 8 months, we have created 120,000 jobs from our housing plan. I will encourage you to go and recruit those people to be members of your movement. Number two, we are also going to create more jobs around the digital space, the technology space. As I talk to you, Parliament today is passing the NGCDF bill that will create opportunity for ICT hubs in every ward in Kenya, because we are seeking to create digital jobs in every village in Kenya. Again, so that we can have more members. And number three, I was having a conversation with the Director General, and he was explaining to me how he found a conversation in Berlin about Kenya's engagement with the German government on bilateral labor agreement that will facilitate more Kenyans to work in Germany as we work on our bilateral labor agreements, so that we can make the labor or migrant workers not a problem, but a solution. So again, we are working in that space to increase the number of people, whether they are working locally, whether they are working in foreign, and whether they are working in remote locations. The whole concept is to create more workers so that because Kenya is a country of workers. So that commitment I have made, and as I told you, I have kept that commitment. We now have 120,000, and my plan is that by 2027, you will have 500,000 people working. That is the plan. I know the court have said we should go and readjust the law to make it aligned appropriately. That we are going to do, so that the 120,000 people can become 200,000 and can become 500,000 in the next 5 years. Because if we don't engage these people in productive work, they will become a very big challenge to all of us. The young people out there, unless we create real opportunities. And you know, we used to talk about we're going to grow the economy and the economy is going to create jobs. It's now beyond that. We have to be deliberate. We have to be intentional about where we are going to create those jobs. Number two, You remember we had a conversation and you guys told me about old age poverty. And you gave me very stark and serious statistics. You told me how Kenya is not doing well. About, I think we are number 90 something. Uko karibu na mwisho. Yeah? And I promise you that we are going to work together. And I must also commend Francis Atwoli. That even though we were on different sides of the political divide, but when there was time to put the country ahead of personal interest, he did that. Because we were in court, and I must commend also Jacqueline, we were in court, all of us, arguing about should we continue paying 200 shillings as our contribution to our social, our NSSF. And it wasn't make sense. It wasn't making sense. So finally, we've all agreed that we need a percentage of our salary. The good news, my good brother Atwoli and the COTU movement and my good sister Jacqueline, is that today we have increased by about 450% our contribution to social security. In fact, we are going to double the money that we are saving at NSSF in the next 4.5 years. We will have doubled the money we have collected for 60 years. We are going to double it in just 4.5 years. That is how transformative things become when leaders work together. And that is why I believe in tripartism. It works best when employers, when workers, and when governments work together. I was very pleased to meet Luca earlier. Luca Triangle. Sorry, I gave you the other name. And I was fascinated by his name until he came to talk here. And his first point was about people striking. So I started to wonder, has this man come to organize a strike in Nairobi? But Atwoli told me, no, he's just talking about the principle. So I said, okay. But let me say, Luca, you are welcome to Kenya, and your name is very fascinating. The reason for this is that our governing mandate, which is based on the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, identifies the radical enhancement of productivity of labor as the engine for our nation's economic takeoff. The best way to stimulate economic vigor, increase incomes, enhance savings, and promote investment is by focusing on men and women who work. The only way to reduce poverty and inequality is by attending to workers and their well-being. Our country is not short of people who work hard. The gap that exists is that of making sure that adequate arrangements exist to ensure that workers have decent jobs, safe and dignified working environment, a fair regime of income and remuneration which rewards skill and productivity, a robust social support including healthcare and dignified retirement, and a macroeconomic environment which effectively manages the cost of living through sustainable interventions and especially support for greater production. And it is the same, I made a commitment that we are going to enhance our productivity and our production, especially in agriculture. I'm very happy that this year our agricultural production has gone up by 40% because of the interventions we are making, so that we can walk the journey in real numbers of reducing the cost of living. You remember, I also promised you that health is not going to be a preserve and is not going to be a luxury for those who can afford. Our universal health coverage this time round is going to take care of those who can afford and is going to make sure that those who cannot afford are carried along by government spending on them. It is also very clear that our bottom-up economic transformation agenda is also a radically pro-labor and boldly worker-centric program of action aimed at creating millions of jobs and lifting tens of millions of Kenyans out of poverty into the middle class. Every intervention, as I have enumerated, under the priority sectors, which form the pillars of our plan, testifies to this. We are therefore highly committed and interested in sustaining a dynamic relationship with the leadership of the national labor movement in order to keep abreast of the aspirations and of our workers and the most salient concerns as it pertains to their development and their well-being. I also congratulate you for your successful effort to host this Congress, which is a tremendous honor for our country and which demonstrates your vision for the labor movement, commitment to serve workers throughout the continent, and your highly developed networking and consensus building credentials. Our bottom-up economic transformation agenda is not worker-centric by accident. Kenya is a workers' country. Our freedom struggle is closely tied with the struggle by Africans for freedom to work in safety and dignity, whether on their land or in industries and other places. Given that colonialism based on forced labor was slavery in all but name, our freedom struggle was always about the fundamental right of Africans to have their personal dignity honored and their economic productivity acknowledged. This is why our foremost celebrated freedom fighters were also labor union leaders and activists, and you know that. Today, we are governed under a constitution which not only identifies human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, and equality among our national values and principles of governance, it also recognizes labor relations and social security as human rights and fundamental freedoms. By setting out the respective rights and obligations of workers, employers, and by implication, government, under Article 21 of our Constitution, the right to fair labor practices implicitly reflects the tripartism which forms the foundation of labor relations. The Labor Relations Act, which brings out this principle in greater detail to guide daily interactions in the workplace, is a case in point. It is clear, then, that social dialogue and tripartism are fundamental for sound industrial relations reflected in robust, collective bargaining agreements and similar instruments, and critical to the realization of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda in terms of social justice, job creation, and the rapid attainment of shared prosperity amongst Kenyans. With 87 registered trade unions in active operation, it is evident that Kenya recognizes the place of trade unions in defining our national character as a people who are not afraid to work their way to freedom and prosperity. We are, above all things, a nation at work. This being the case, we are fully seized of our mandate to advance the social dialogue agenda in honor of the solidarity with which our labor movement has promoted, sustained, and defended our freedom and our development. Measures like the full implementation of the NSSF Act 2013 was certainly overdue, requiring urgent action in order to guarantee dignified retirement for workers and the protection of retirees from old age poverty, as I have enumerated earlier. It is important that our social security regime attains a standard that exceeds the minimum established by the International Labour Organization under Convention number 102 of 1952. And I think we are heading there. Our determination to actualize the best standards of worker protection and welfare has inspired us to endeavor to align our labor policy framework with all international labor standards that have been ratified by Kenya, including the upgrading of our occupational safety and health, as well as work injury benefits regime. As we do this, we urge closer collaboration with the International Training Center for International Labour Organization for purposes of benchmarking and capacity building in order to make our labor movements responsive, dynamic, and effective. The work done so far in the education and health sector points to a promising future for social dialogue and greater improvement in terms of promoting alternative dispute resolution to ease the burden on the employment and labor relations courts system. We have launched the third generation County Decent Work Program, which is our basic policy framework for the International Labour Organization's Global Jobs Pact 209. We believe that decent jobs lie at the heart of human well-being, economic transformation, and overall prosperity. It is logical, therefore, that this program therefore drives social dialogue to promote the actualization of our bottom-up economic transformation agenda. I'm encouraged by the labor movement's attention to the activity in the area of climate action and fully agree with your proposition that a just transition must consider the socio-economic interests of communities in formulating policies in response to climate change and ensure that workers are not disproportionately prejudiced by mitigation and adaptation measures. In other words, sustainability and social justice must go together. Otherwise, we will leave other people behind. As a gathering of the Pan-African Trade Union leadership, I am confident that you are also in touch with the seismic movement of the African Continental Free Trade Area, that you are taking a role in making sure that this unprecedented free trade area delivers its promise of a better future for workers, and does so in full. As you do this, emphasize the necessity of free movement throughout our continent and the need to collaborate in transforming Africa under ACFTA into a vast territory of opportunity and to facilitate labor migration to connect knowledge and skills with these opportunities and others everywhere, including abroad. Let me say this: we've been pushing as leaders in this continent that it doesn't make sense for us to erect barriers and create unnecessary roadblocks of movement of people, of movement of goods, ideas, services around our continent. The people who taught us about visas, they themselves have abandoned visas. If you go to Europe, where we learned about this visa thing, Europe today, 27 countries, 450 million people have abandoned visa amongst themselves. We in Africa are still struggling with visas. You're blocking this guy from coming, you're blocking this state from coming, you're doing that. Now, if those who taught us to erect barriers and create hurdles and have visas have abandoned it, what business do we have continuing to have these visas? From my interactions with you, that you are highly interested in the various unfolding scenarios in terms of technological advancement and how they affect the future of work. I had the opportunity of speaking to this subject in Geneva in June. I am aware of the passion and motivation with which you are engaged. We are interested in your input insofar as technological changes, the expanding informal sectors, changing methods and structures of work methods, demographic change in the world of work, and finally, climate change. We are in an era defined by constant change, and it is our duty to keep up with it. I am confident that this Congress will live up to expectations by driving workers' agenda to the center of Pan-African economic transformation agenda, and I wish you a very successful time in Nairobi, great proceedings, and fruitful deliberations. I am very confident that we have a great outcome to look up to. So thank you very much. God bless you, and my very best wishes. Asanteni sana.